Hey guys, Fox here, and today it's time to talk about the final Tank Bowl of the 2024 United Football League season between the Houston Roughnecks and the Memphis Showboats. Now, this isn't just a Tank Bowl. This has been dubbed the Toilet Bowl. Whoever wins this game will be getting the first overall pick. That was announced by Daryl Moose Johnston heading into the game, as it's a throwback to the 2022 USFL season where the Maulers and Panthers played for a very similar title. So yes, this is a very big game for both teams, as the winner will get the number one overall pick in the upcoming UFL draft. Now, as for this matchup of the insane lightweights, we have Nolan Henderson going against Josh Love. Yes, both teams are going to be starting their third string QB to start the season in this game. Naturally, it's at the very end of the season. Both teams are eliminated. This game still has meaning, but both coaches decide to put their third stringers out there. Now, Nolan Henderson, we have seen a lot of action from him, and he has been a very solid QB when he's been in. As for Love, very little we've seen of him this year, mainly just a little bit we saw last week. And overall, from what we saw him with the Panthers in 2023, he was a very hot and cold QB. Now, yes, both these teams come into this game at a record of 1-8 each, with the only win the Showboats have being against Houston in Week 1, and the only win Houston having being against the Renegades in Week 4, when Luis Perez had arguably his worst game of the entire season. So that is the matchup, and without further ado, let's get right on into the actual Tank Bowl. Now, we do start with some actual action in this game, as the kickoff happens. Memphis gets the ball at a very decent return, and they end up having a decent drive, which does end at a field goal for Matt Coughlin to put the team up 3-0, eating up about 5.5 minutes on the clock. Now, the next drive is one that's pretty crazy. Houston ends up having a really solid drive, but at the end they end up getting hit with a penalty to hit a 2nd and 19. After a failed 2nd and 19 play, Henderson would be able to make a really solid pass to Kirk Merritt, as Kirk Merritt would end up gaining 17 yards, making it a 4th and 2. The Roughnecks decide to go for it in 4th and 2, but Mark Thompson is stopped almost immediately for a loss of 1, and it's a turnover on downs. Now, after a punt by Memphis, Houston would get the ball back, but Reed Sinnett, who was in the game at this point, ended up throwing an interception and some almost fumble, but in the end it was just ruled that, it was a fumble out of bounds, but Memphis would get the ball back thanks to that interception. After Memphis does absolutely nothing with the interception, both teams would end up trading a few punts. That was until Houston would finally get on the board with a field goal attempt late in the second quarter to finally tie the game up 3-3, almost at the half with just a minute left. After this, Houston would kick off the ball, but during the kickoff, they would end up getting hit with an unnecessary roughness penalty, giving Memphis the ball at the 50-yard line. After just a couple plays, they're able to get in field goal range, where Matt Coughlin kicks the third field goal of the day, putting up the Showboats 6-3. Then after that, Houston would actually continue doing something on offense, as Henderson has a decent drive, but J.J. Molson would end up missing the kick to keep the game 6-3 Memphis. Finally, we see a touchdown, as the next drive sees the Showboats actually drive down the field, and the final play is a Darius Victor rushing touchdown. A 2-yard TD finally gives them the lead. And in the end, though, they would have to convert the 2-point conversion twice because of a penalty on the first time, and the second time ends up being incomplete, forcing it to be 12-3 after the Showboats touchdown. And surprise, surprise, the Roughnecks do end up answering, as Kirk Merritt would go up for a 1-yard rushing touchdown, but they would also fail the 1-point conversion, which still makes the game 12-9, just a field goal difference. Then the next drive almost ended in disaster for Memphis. It ended up being just a really bad drive, but they ended up having Love throw an interception that could have gone for a pick six, but a penalty made it just an interception. So yes, it was still a bad play, interception, but it could have been a pick six had it not been for the penalty that Houston got during the return. In the end, though, Houston would still be able to put up some points on the board to tie the game up, as they were able to get another field goal up, making the game 12-12, tied game. After that, Memphis would go on a really long 4.5-minute long drive, which ended with another Darius Victor rushing touchdown, putting them up 17-12, and they would end up getting, or 18-12, and they would end up getting the 1-point conversion to make it 19-12, as Darius Davis once again, or Dawood Davis once again, has another great play, and so Memphis is up 7 points. Then after this, Houston would go on a final drive for the ages, and I mean that in a negative way. Simply put, this was a horror drive once it got near to the Memphis TD, or Memphis end zone. A bunch of bad timeout calls, a bunch of just bad decisions on plays, ended with a Nolan Henderson incomplete pass for Justin Hall that would basically end the game, as it was on 4th and 3 and there were no timeouts left. And with that, Memphis officially wins the 2024 United Football League Toilet Bowl. Overall, when you look at the stats of this game, it pretty much shows that Houston overall should have won this game. They were the better team in the fact they put up much more yardage, over 100 more total yards than Memphis did. But the issue was, of course, in the fact that they couldn't capitalize on turnovers as well as they needed to, as the fact is instead of getting that pick six, they were stuck getting a field goal. And while Memphis wasn't able to get a ton of points off the one turnover they had, the difference is Houston was 1 of 4 in the red zone, whereas Memphis was 2 of 3. Red zone efficiency has been a story for a lot of these teams during the season, whether it be certain games or certain periods of time. Houston not being able to capitalize in the end zone and the 2 separate failed fourth down conversions ended up being what cost them the game, as they had multiple opportunities to take points. Yes, in hindsight, them not kicking that field goal very early in the game when they were in field goal range ended up being probably the worst decision of the day. If they had made that kick, it would have made the ending a lot different. They could have potentially gone for a field goal and then a 4th and 12. They could have done different plays, but in the end, they did lose. And Memphis finishes the season with 2 wins, both being against Houston. So that'll do it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. We're at pretty much the end of the we are at the end of the regular season, but we're now at the playoffs. I still am planning to do at least a couple videos a week. Naturally, it's going to be a bit less than we saw the last few weeks, since we're probably not going to be able to do a Fox Super 6 picks. Maybe there's one for the playoffs, but we'll see. As always, guys, have a great night.